Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Pili Fronda. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. You are in sunny, warm, beautiful Los Angeles.
72 degrees. Can't complain.
5 hours on a plane trip to the place where you were born, right?
hmm
It's closer than it is here. Let me tell you, I was there in 2022 and Hawaii is magical. Just like your full actual name. Tell me how to pronounce your full name.
Sure. Sure. My full name is Josias Pili Ikoeio Kupu Franda, with that middle name being about 26 letters.
Holy cow. What is it? What's the story behind it?
Sure. It's funny because and we'll get into this as we kind of go throughout the podcast, but I actually have a decently short name in Hawaiian culture. There are teachers that had no problem saying my name, but the other ones that were longer than mine, they had to cut shorter. To get back to your question, Pili no maka i ka oia i'o means eyes that cling to the truth. Specifically in Hawaiian culture, when they give you a name, it is meant to not only hold weight throughout the child's life, but also as the parents are naming their child, they hope that whatever values or meaning the name has, that it also embodies itself within the character of the child itself. I grew up in a Christian household, and my mom was pretty adamant about making sure that she led us in a way that allowed us to do our respective things, especially as we grew older and grew into our careers, but maintained good morals and good character at the center of it.
Wow. You grew up in Honolulu.
Yeah, I grew up first and foremost on the west side. That was about an hour away from the school that I went to. So as a 7-year old, I was waking up at like 5:30 a.m. to hop onto the bus. No idea how I did it. And then eventually, a few years later, we actually ended up moving a bit closer to the school because my mom became a teacher there.
How does your Hawaiian heritage shape you as a musician? Was there a music scene back then? And did you grow up in a musical family? Did you think that you wanted to be a professional musician from way back then or not?
Sure. I grew up in a family that held music very highly. It was always something that was either around the house, or a lot of my grandparents, as well as my mom, played ukulele, guitar, and bass, kind of that traditional Hawaiian trio of instruments. But nobody who had really like delved into the professional music side as far as, the New York or the LA thing. But the music industry in Hawaii is actually quite an interesting one. I think growing up there, I dealt a lot with reggae music just because it has such a huge presence on the islands. But with that being said, everybody wants to find a reason to vacation in Hawaii. So, at any given time, I think Janet Jackson was there, Engelbert Humperdinck was there, so we were seeing a multitude of artists, and then also sometimes because Hawaii is so expensive to travel to, sometimes we were seeing like no artists at all. So there were certain years where the diversity in the music industry was huge, and then it would die down back to just the reggae scene and the things that Hawaii was a bit comfortable with. But I've often heard of it described as a melting pot, and mainly that kind of goes with the food part of it, as far as like you go to a Japanese restaurant in Hawaii and it might be some of the best Japanese food you've had because a family from Japan now lives there and has lived there for 20 years. So now they're making all their family recipes. And then you go down the street to like a Filipino spot and it's the same thing. And luckily, the music industry is kind of reflective of that as well. There are a lot of people there who are very good at what they do and just happen to either live part-time or full-time in Hawaii and bring their influences and backgrounds with them.
When I was there in 2022, just riding around and turning on the local stations, I noticed that there was a lot of reggae music playing. Why is that the
hmm
case?
Couldn't tell you. What I think it is And I've had my fair share of these, but what I think it is that if you are sitting on a beach and you have a longboard beer in your hand, probably not going to be listening to pop music. What you want is reggae music. So, especially kind of the more beach bar tourist side of it, there was a lot of reggae music being played there because again, guitar, ukulele, and bass trio just felt different if you were sitting on the beach. You could see
Hmm.
the waves in the background.
Mm. It definitely.
I can see you imagining it right now. It makes me happy.
When I think before we got started, I was saying that I played a gig out in Maui and I was there for 5 days. Then my girlfriend came out and we spent another week there. And then a friend of mine was actually getting married on Oahu a couple weeks later. So we decided to go to the big mountain of Hawaii, spent a few days there, and just fell in love with that island. And then we went to Oahu and saw Honolulu, and just there's just something about that place that just made my love of mountains and large bodies of water, because you're surrounded by the Pacific Ocean, nice people,
Yeah,
great food. Just like, why would I want to go anyplace else? I don't know. There's
sure.
just obviously there's a lot more to it because it's a very expensive place to live.
Yeah,
But so is San Francisco, so is LA, and so is New York.
yeah.
People go there anyway. So you got to figure out how to survive and how to make the best out of it, because you don't want to be any of these places and not have money.
Sure. Well, it's funny that you bring that up as far as kind of like being able to see the mountains on one side and the ocean on the other, because if you go back and look at the cultural significance of that, there were a lot of ecosystems that were built because the ocean and the mountains were so close that you had your hunters and gatherers, and then you also had your fishermen. And in the middle, they have all of their streams coming down to cultivate these other crops and all of that stuff, so that by the time you have meals or somebody is coming to visit from another tribe or whatever that might be, they had such a perfectly working ecosystem because it's one of the few places in the world that those things are so close to each other that it just serves the middle of the community really well.
Couple quick stories, then we get back into drumming.
Yeah, please.
On Maui, and somebody says, you got to drive the road to Hana. I'm like, what are you talking about? What's this road to Hana? Yeah, just get in the car and drive. So I did it by myself. I had this like minivan and I drove. No, actually, I was with my girlfriend. We didn't have a minivan for that. We drove there and back, and obviously takes a while to get there. But at the very end, we were just there. We saw these people selling stuff for their football team, and it was the Hana football team that was featured on 60 Minutes or something like that, because it's a football team way out there. I was like, wait a minute, there's a football team way out here. Who else do you play?
Yeah. It's just scrimmages between each other. It's one half of the team versus the other half of the team.
But I did go on, I think I forgot where I was driving, but I went to go around Maui. So you down where all the resorts are, and then you go up. I forgot what road it is, and I tried to go all the way around because that Maui is split in between like two halves. I
Yeah.
tried to come down, but I realized that road is not really meant for driving. So I was driving, and I had like almost a minivan, and I got to this point, and I saw it when after I looked it up on YouTube of this road that you're not supposed to go on with a big car. But I was driving and then I was turning on these little roads, and then everybody was like, "Stop, go back. You can't make it." I was like, "What are you talking about?" If I had turned, I wouldn't have been able to go anymore because I would have fallen off the cliff. So I was so nervous going back. I was like, my hands were sweating on the wheel. And I look back and I see that there was some kind of cross that was there from somebody that actually tried to make it and they didn't live. But in any event,
Well, so let me ask you this follow-up question. Do you remember what soundtrack you were listening to as you were making that drive?
I can't remember. I don't think I had anything on because I was so scared.
It's one of those things, and I only learned this recently, maybe 2020, that drives like that or moments like that in Hawaii pull you out of it's such an out of body experience that the music that you're listening to and the things that you're seeing come together in such a weird way that a friend of mine who was visiting there, I think had on some Fleetwood Mac album. And he's like, I am never going to look at that album the same
Uh,
because I was driving down this road and I'm seeing all these things, and all of a sudden, the music that's playing has a completely different, every time that album plays, that's what I see now.
it didn't happen then. Starting to get chills because I'm thinking about when that happened with me. I was listening to this album by Calvin Harris, and on the album cover, I can't remember what the name of the album is, but it has an island surrounded by water, and I forgot what song it was. But I really like that whole album. I'll post it in the show notes. But
Yeah.
we were driving through the Big Island, going to the southernmost tip, and just that drive, and then even driving on the Big Island and just going straight and seeing lava on the right hand side, mountains
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, and just a wide
Mm-hmm.
open space, and just driving for miles, and it's just magical.
Yeah.
And that album is again, I can't listen to it without thinking of that. It makes me relaxed, and just to think about where I was and the whole time I was there, I'm like, you're right. It changes you.
Yeah. It's a good solution to taking the A train after a show.
Showtime.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
But the last thing about Hawaii, then we'll get more into your life. When I was there, I was playing with this club day band, and we were playing for some corporate event. But during the corporate event, they had people that were from Maui perform, the people that were moving the fire things around, and
Mm-hmm.
forgot what they were called. But then they had this drummer who was playing on some kind of garbage thing. I forgot what it was called, and I eventually wound up connecting with him and asking him about the instrument that he's playing. He's a great drummer, and there was a bunch of other drummers that were doing things. And then I saw him someplace else just sitting down, and we just connected. He had face tattoos and they represented things. And I just was so fascinated by the culture. He was telling me where he lives in Maui. And whenever you want to come by, I got his number. And, we've been keeping in contact ever since. And then I found out about the Lahaina fire. And I was like, man, you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm good. It's not near me, but, we still feel it and see it. And some people that I know were down there and still come out whenever you want. I just found the people there to be so nice and everything, there's very few things that I didn't like about it. I can't even think
Yeah.
about anything I didn't. So I wonder, obviously you're out here doing things for your professional career.
Yeah.
Would you ever want to go back there and live?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I'm just going to briefly touch on something you said. I think what Hawaii has figured out that sometimes I think the rest of the continental US misses is that a lot of times Hawaii doesn't trade being nice for. I think sometimes when people think of being nice, they also get like rolled over by a bus. And they're like, well, if I'm being nice, then I have to succumb to whatever happens. And oh no. And I feel like the thing that Hawaii has figured out is more so the sense of family and community of like, hey, if you do something that's incredibly stupid, we're going to let you know. But
Mm,
also at the same time, what we're going to do is as a community and as a family, we're going to help you figure that problem out or do whatever that is. Or in the case of the Lahaina fires, the way that they took a step forward is the community moved forward together. It wasn't just like every man for themselves, good luck. It was like, no, no,
mm,
no, we all need dinner right now. The community across the street is bringing in dinner for the community that was affected or whatever that might be. But it's never in a sense of sacrifice towards themselves. It's like, no, we understand that if we are growing together as a community, when something falls, we can help pick each other up. But that's because the understanding of community outweighs the every man for themselves mentality, which I think sometimes a lot of these other cities have to deal with. And it's unfortunate to see, but it's, in my opinion, something that has Hawaii has figured out quite well. To answer your question, I spent the first 18 years of my life in Hawaii. I also went to a school called Kamehameha Schools, which was a kindergarten through 12th grade education institution. And I say education institution rather than school because their emphasis, literally in the will of the school, the goal of what they're trying to do is to make good and industrious men and women. And that came out of a period of time where Hawaiian language was banned. The Hawaiian people were shamed for being Hawaiian. I mean, to the point that there are stories of Hawaiian students and just people in general who would rub their skin with lemons to try and bleach their skin because a lot of these other people from other places were coming in and they're like, you don't speak English or you don't do this and this and this. So let's adjust what you're doing. And a lot of people don't know this, but Hawaii is highly intelligent. They had, I'm drawing a blank on where it was in Hawaii, but they were the first place in the United States to have electricity. I could be wrong about this, and I'm sure somebody will make a comment if I am wrong about it, but I believe it was Iolani Palace. And Hawaii held a huge emphasis on innovation. They saw these people coming in. They're like, well, we know what we do, but we also don't understand what you do. So teach us and we'll adjust to whatever we're doing. But a lot of these people would come in and see that Hawaii wasn't doing what they were doing. So instead
Mm.
of the innovation factor, they were like, no, let's just change it. So anyway, I say all of that to say that the culture and the music, the food and the people were and still are a big part of my life. The chance to be able to go back, whether it's professionally or just to see family and friends, is I take that opportunity often. But as far as kind of what I have delved into professionally, there isn't a whole lot of that out there on the island. So, I'm sure if you were to ask me 10, 20 years from now, I might have a different answer, but at least kind of in this growing phase of my career, I am happy being close enough, but still looking outside of the islands to build that.
One last thing about Hawaii.
I hope you understand that this is like, first of all, these conversations make me very happy. But second
Good,
of all,
good.
anytime that I run into anybody, it doesn't matter if it's New York or Chicago or Atlanta or LA, the instant I mention that I'm from Hawaii, they go, I spent like a week there back in the 90s or whatever that is. And then that's the majority of the conversation. So there is never an apology needed for this.
Man, again, I'm the kind of person when I go someplace, yeah, you do the tourist thing, but I
Mhm.
want to talk to the people that live there. I want to go and eat where they live. Where do I get what's the food that is popular now? Poke bowls.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to get that stuff here now. I want to go there. And I tried it. I'm not a big fan of it, but
Hmm.
you get Hawaiian food and you got to get the mac and cheese and not the macaroni, mac salad
Yes.
and the
Yeah. Yeah.
rice.
Yep.
Like, why am I eating mac salad and rice and whatever food? And I tried all kinds of stuff. I drove around. I met this guy. I called him the Coconut Man. I had the van. I was driving around Maui. I stopped someplace. I saw this guy selling coconuts. He just cut up the coconut and he was telling me, you should bring me some collard greens and fried chicken. First, I was like, oh, why are you talking to me about collard greens and fried chicken? But
Yeah.
anyway, it was more just talking to the guy and then meeting the person that was the drummer and finding about his family and why he had so many tattoos and what the significance of that was. And then when we flew to the Big Island and went to the southernmost portion of the United States, and
Hmm.
also realizing that these islands existed for many thousands of years and it's
Hmm.
part of the United States really because of us. We went to Pearl Harbor because of the strategic aspect of where those islands were in relation to the Japanese Empire. But
Yeah.
also looking at the flag of Hawaii, why is the Union Jack on the flag of
Hmm.
Hawaii? Why is the Great Britain? Why are they all over the place? They were in Hong Kong. They're in Hawaii. They were in. Canada, they're in the United States, they're all over the place. And then thinking about who was there on the islands before there was kingdoms, and I forgot the name of the king that ruled all over all of them. And then I forget there's a big story that I go deep into the history of the place because it to me it means more when I know why it was here, why people look like this, why they ate they what they
Yeah.
ate.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm going there to visit, but this is a place that was there long before these tourists came there and made
Hmm.
Honolulu what it is, and Hawaii 50, another beautiful thing in Honolulu. And realizing all of these things and seeing, it's like, how did these people get to this island? Then I learned about the people that traveled on the ocean on these
Hmm.
paddles. Like, you
Hmm.
traveled on the ocean going like, and
Hmm.
they think that Americans are the smartest, or the Europeans are the smartest. Wait, no, these people were traveling well before sailing in Great Britain. So I'm
Yeah.
like, it's just knowledge that I've learned.
Here's the cool thing about where I went to school. It wasn't exclusively for just children of Hawaiian descent. What they did as they were building the foundation of the school is they said, what is going on right now in our history and with our people? What we want to do is give an opportunity to these Hawaiian students to build their skills so that they can be the next CEOs, so that they can be the next, big entrepreneurs, so that they can be the next educators and, those roles that are paving the culture and the community of Hawaii. And because they gave preference to Hawaiian students, there are waiting lists that are miles and miles long because the understanding of it is so great as far as the education opportunities that they are given that anybody who could apply wants to. The cool thing with having that instilled in the school is, again, we could finish this and I could be corrected by an email from somebody who's listening to this. But I believe that in the history of the school, they haven't had anybody who's not of Hawaiian descent. And what happens when a community is built that way is a lot of elementary schools have fourth, fifth, and sixth grade are split into some kind of history breakdown for your classes. What would happen at this school is fourth grade was just Hawaiian history. So you would learn about the kings, you would learn about the way that Hawaii was annexed in, I'm not even going to say the year because I'm definitely going to get it wrong. The monarchy of Hawaii and how the people lived and all of that stuff. And then fifth grade, you would dive into US history, and sixth grade would be world history. But I say all of that to say that the emphasis on Hawaiian history was instilled in these young students at such a young age that they just kind of grew up with it. And then at the same time, you have your music classes where, like the stereotypical thing is to learn recorder in, I think, like second grade or whatever that might be. At the same time, I believe in first grade, you pick up an ukulele and you start learning how to play native Hawaiian songs on a instrument that is used in native Hawaiian music all the time. And so everything from the music and the history, as well as like the school lunches that were made every once in a while. Like if it was a big occasion, everybody knew that it was going to be Hawaiian food because that's the way that they, want to present their culture. And not just for show, but in a meaningful way that allows these young people to get a very strong sense of culture at a very young age.
I understand when we were out in Vegas, we got some Hawaiian food that tasted just like it did on the island.
Hmm.
There's a big Hawaiian population in Vegas, and do you know anything about that and why?
Yeah, we were in Vegas, I believe in August. And when I tell you that it was one of the cities that I was looking forward to the most, not because it was Vegas, but because I knew that there was that Hawaiian food spot, literally like days counting down. The first night we got there, I was like, nah, I do not care what time I get in. I'm going there.
Where was it? Was it Lenny's? So do you remember
No,
the name?
Zippies.
Okay, okay.
And I'm this is not a sponsored ad at all, but it's become such a like feeling of home for me that I get off the plane and it is 10 minutes to the nearest Zippies and 5 minutes from that Zippies to our family's apartment. So
Really?
anytime I'm off the plane, I'm like, Zippies, home. So I I want to go out on a limb and say, since I've left the island, anytime I've gone home, it's been go to Zippy's. So when I knew I was in Vegas, I was like, hands down, the first place I'm gonna go.
Damn, I should have went. Oops, sorry, I'm playing this here.
No,
I'm
you're good. You're good.
I'm looking at it on Google Maps. I should have gone to Zippy's, man. Place we went is really good.
Yeah.
Maybe that's this. First of all, being in Vegas, the only thing that was missing. Of course, there's no water in
Yeah.
Vegas. There's beautiful mountains, and it's a desert as opposed to Hawaii, which is so lush and green. But if I can get Hawaiian food and also be that much closer to Hawaii, I'll take it.
Well, and also it's funny because you mentioned something earlier. I think the reason why that person was asking you for like the collard greens and stuff is because potlucks are such a part of the Hawaiian culture as far
Mm,
as like, hey, we're having dinner down at two houses down and everybody brings a plate. Now, we used to be neighbors with a Polynesian family a couple streets down. And if they did not bring Polynesian food to like after they had a garage sale because they would sell their stuff and then also make food, they would hand out the food that they had left over to their neighbors and stuff, whether it's church potlucks or school potlucks or whatever that might be. If you were bringing, nobody in their right mind would bring hamburgers. The
mm,
Japanese family is bringing Japanese food. And not only was it a sense of pride from the people bringing it, but it's also a sense of like the people who know these families that are coming. They're like, I can't wait to eat that food again. So if they show up with McDonald's burgers, the level of disappointment is so high because they're like, I'm not gonna lie, the last time you brought your grandmother's sushi or whatever it was, why are you
mm.
bringing McDonald's this time?
Community thing.
And also a sense of pride when it comes to food because it's like no, like your history is also represented by the food you bring, so bring what you have to the table. And it's funny that you bring up the rice because I went to school in Phoenix, Arizona, and the first time that we had one of my friends were like, oh, we're gonna have dinner over at Matt's place, and I was like, great. And I got there and I was like, where's the rice? You guys just eat meat and vegetables? Nobody has a rice pot plugged in right now. And so that took me a minute to get used to.
That's funny.
A lovely curse. But seriously, I was like, nobody has rice. And they were like, why do you need rice? Like, what do you eat it with? And I was like, anything.
Everything.
You have chicken, you eat rice. You have pork, you eat rice. You have fish, rice.
A lot of cultures do that too.
And the
I,
thing about the poke bowls too is a lot of these cities, here's the way, from a Hawaiian person, here's the way you can tell if it's going to be good or not. If you go to even where I was in Phoenix, they had poke bowls, and I was like, okay, like the fish looks good quality, but as they're making the bowl, it's like rice, a couple scoops of fish, and then, like edamame and seaweed and carrots and all this and corn and all this other stuff. And the first time I was with somebody and they got it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I can't, this looks so great." And I was like, eh. They're like, "What do you mean?" Eh. I was like, if you go to Hawaii, it is a bed of rice and a half pound of fish, and that's it. It's rice and fish. And they're like, if you don't like the fish, then it's not for you. However, the product speaks for itself. So we're just going to put it on rice because you need starch,
mm.
and that's it. So the first time I got a poke bowl not in Hawaii, I was like, why are you putting corn on top? Can I just get the fish? And then I took a bite of the fish and I was like, oh, it's
That's
because you
why.
need the.
It's like when I was with my son in Vegas and we were hungry, so we went into this Indian restaurant
Mhm.
and they're like, "Oh, come on in." But we were looking around. I was like, "Is this gonna be any good?" Oh, good. It is gonna be good because there were some Indians there eating it.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Mm-hmm.
go into a soul food restaurant, you better look for some black people because you see a bunch of Beckys. Of no, no,
Yeah, and same with Hawaiian spots. If I walk
yes,
in and there are pictures of like cardboard cutout hula dancers and grass skirts going across the where you check out, I'm like, I'm okay.
yeah,
But funny enough, now a very good friend of mine, Jody Kimura, and I, both from Hawaii, we were both on the Doubtfire tour. And she had texted me when we were in Cincinnati, and she's like, I found this place and I don't know what to think of it, but I haven't visited yet. So I was just going to go before a show. And we walk in, and friends of mine who have Hawaiian music albums out now, we walk in and that's the music playing. They have the albums up on like in the back of the restaurant. The guy is wearing a University of Hawaii, like this 350-pound dude as a cashier, not even as the cook. He's just the cashier. And both of us looked at each other and we're like, out of all the places in the middle of Cincinnati, wouldn't have thought that we would have found this here, but it was some of the like the best Hawaiian food that we had on tour.
wow,
I tell you, you can tell within seconds. And it's either if I'm sitting down, we're gonna eat. But in those 2 seconds, if I make the sharp pivot, we're never visiting there again.
that's funny. Bass drum pedals. Tell me about your.
Yeah. Now to get into the fifth hour of Hawaii 101, because we've just completely taken over this podcast.
Oh man, I like to learn about people and talk to people, get their stories, and drumming is to me, it's the should say icing on the cake, but it's you find out what makes people tick and where they came from and what they're all
Yeah,
about. It informs their musicianship, in my opinion, and their approach to playing Mrs. Doubtfire. I find it more interesting to me. So I'm sorry.
sure. Well,
Has
and to connect it to music, I very quickly realized how different Hawaii was in the spectrum of music once I got to school in Phoenix. The only student from Hawaii in that program at that time. Since I joined, I think there was two or three students that while I was there had joined the program. But when I first got into the program, I was the only student from Hawaii. Second line New Orleans music and gospel music and all of that stuff. But Hawaii was such a different scene that specifically in, I'm trying to remember what class it was. I think it might have been like the pop music history class where we're going through all the decades and stuff. And I remember Joshua Lukemeyer, my teacher that year, coming up to me and he goes, I don't know why your name sounds familiar, but I feel like I've either seen some of your work or something. And what had happened was this school that I went to was working on a new project called Canyon Collective. It was basically just a chance for students to be able to work on their producer credits and work with other instrumentalists and singers. And I remember submitting what they were working on that year, an album of hymns. And so there were a lot of, CCM arrangements of one chord and then the six chord and then the three, like very simplistic kind of what the CCM music standard looked like. And I remember writing like this super flashy arrangement of a hymn with horns and Latin percussion because that was such a heavy influence in Hawaiian music as well. Like if you go and look at the more contemporary music coming out of Hawaii, they have conga and they have bongo patterns that very look very similar to that of Latin music. And so all of these things that I was growing up with, I had thrown into this arrangement. And that's when Joshua Lukemeyer came up to me and he's, yeah, so the reason why you look familiar is because the board of that project got it and had no idea what to do with it because it was like all of these things that looked similar and then this weird outlier of something that was so outside of the box. And then maybe a week or two after in that same pop class, we were talking about our influences. There was a lot of Bach and there was a lot of Mozart, which I respect all of them. But I was coming in and I was like, Tower of Power and CeCe
Mm.
Winans and bits and pieces from gospel and funk music and R&B and the Roots and all of these other things that I could go down any street and listen to in Hawaii, and there was a place for it somewhere. And so it really I didn't realize how different Hawaii was as far as the music scene until coming in for a landing at Phoenix.
Now, what did you go to the University of Phoenix?
Grand Canyon University, yeah,
Grand Ca-
in Phoenix, Arizona.
You studied music there.
Yeah, what's the official title? Music performance with an emphasis in percussion,
Oh, wow.
which sounds like I put on a suit and tie.
What was your goal in getting an education there, and what did you want out of it?
Sure. I mean, I think that starts with when I was back in Hawaii. The not selfish side, but the chip on my shoulder is in fifth grade is when the band program starts, you know? So everybody's trying out for an instrument and they're like, I want to play cornet. Great, we're going to put you on cornet. And I came in and I was like, I want to play percussion. At that point, I was a center on the basketball team. I had already had my growth spurt and my voice was a little higher than what it currently is, but not much higher. So I had already gone through puberty and my band teacher took one look at me and he goes, okay. I think you might be one of the only kids big enough to carry a tuba. How do you feel about that? And I was
Tuba.
like, a tuba is not what I wanted to do at all. But my band and music were taught by two different teachers. And my music teacher, Linnell Bright, I had walked by the band room one day and she was in there just teaching one of the percussionists like this two-handed or basically a rock groove. And I had walked past that and I like snuck my head into the window and I was like, what is going on here? That's what I want to do. Like, why am I there? And so, very luckily, she had spent some time teaching me. And the cool thing about that whole experience is very shortly after kind of teaching me the very basics, she taught me this two-handed groove and recorded it with the laptop the school gave us. And I recorded it on photo booth. And then I went home that night and I made here's what that groove is at 50% speed and then 75%. And then this is like 100% like where you're supposed to be. I at that point had no idea what drum instructional videos were, so I was like, I'm a genius. This is
Mm.
how I'm figuring this out. The reason why I bring that up is because what she was doing, and I didn't know this, is she was trying to see one, if I could handle learning this, and two, if I actually had interest in pursuing the practice route of what we do. And basically she came up to me a couple weeks after and I had at again at this was like fifth, sixth grade. I was like, I learned the groove, kind of, not really. And she had offered me a gig. And she said every year, fifth grade, the fifth graders do a show. And she said, as a sixth grader, if you can learn this in a couple months when the fifth grade play happens, I'll have you play drum set because her brother-in-law, who normally played drums, couldn't make it that year. And so now at 14, I am seeing if I practice, I get a gig. There is quite literally the cause and effect that is presented to me at such a young age. And so, I spent any and all free time that I had there learning that and luckily could do the fifth grade play. The elementary school comes in to watch the show and they're watching these fifth graders on stage and then they turn to their left, which is where the band alcove was, and there I am as a sixth grader playing drums. So I felt like the coolest guy on the planet. But what I didn't know was there's a man who's very well loved in the Hawaii entertainment industry called Ronald Bright. And what I had no idea about this guy was if you wanted a career in Broadway from Hawaii, your best bet was to work with Ronald Bright. Now, Ronald Bright is the father-in-law of Linnell Bright. So as I'm learning and doing this fifth grade play, at the same time, she's like seeing interest in me actually playing drums. I think at that time they were doing Hairspray, a local production of Hairspray. And that was my first pit sit. She came in and she was playing percussion. Her husband was playing drums. And she was like, if this is something that interests you, why don't you just come check this out? And that trajectory has, at that point in sixth grade, I was like, oh, I want to play drums. Like there is nothing else that I want to do besides play drums. And the full circle moment of that is when we were playing in Los Angeles. Clark and Linnell Bright came up from Hawaii to come see the show. And so to be
Mm.
able to see those people who made, because it was an investment, to see the people who made that investment sitting in the audience at a first national Broadway tour that I'm playing at the Hollywood Pantages Theater was such a fulfilling moment for me. But the reason why I bring that up, answering your question about college, is because I had quickly realized that if I wanted to pursue this professionally, I would have to leave Hawaii. And that there was never a level of disgust that I was met with when I had shared that with my peers and my classmates and my friends, but there was a level of confusion because nobody around me was doing that. If they were studying music, they were going to the University of Hawaii and they were studying Hawaii music. When it came to me, I was like, yeah, I'm going to GCU and I'm going to study music and get my degree in percussion. And they were like,
Mm.
is that a thing? And I was like, the guy next to you just said he's studying guitar and it's Hawaiian music. But because it's a tangible thing that you see in Hawaii, you understand it.
Mm.
The college aspect is as far as kind of figuring out what that looked like. I already came in taking myself seriously as an artist because the people around me not necessarily didn't take me seriously, but they just didn't understand how to support me. And so kind of navigating that whole college scenario, I was already coming in with like, what can I do to be taken seriously as a studio drummer or as a theater guy or playing with an artist or whatever that was. I was constantly looking for things to get involved in while I was up there.
So from Honolulu to Grand Canyon University to the first national tour of Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah,
How did you get
crazy, crazy.
how did you get connected to the people that were involved in the first national tour?
Yeah. I think anytime that I talk to anybody, they don't realize that like in 2020, I was graduating high school.
Mm.
I'm 23. Like to come from Hawaii to Phoenix and have great gigs in both areas, but then to go to a first national tour, that's not something that I take for granted at all. It's a constant reminder of putting in the work and stepping out in faith and just keeping your head down and working because there's really no other way to pursue these kind of things. But anyway, to get back to your question, as far as the Doubtfire thing went, again, because I graduated in 2020, a lot of things went online. I mean, even this, when we're able, and you and I would not be able to talk unless I was in New York or you were in Los Angeles right now. And I had no idea that that was going to happen, as any of us did. But while I was preparing to, looking at schools that I was possibly going to go to, I emailed or DM'd any and every music director and drummer. And I was like, hey, I want to take my education further. I want to pursue professional music, whether it's on Broadway or some of the people that I had reached out to that were working on Broadway were also doing films and working with artists. And I was like, I just know that I want to pursue a further education in music. So if you have any advice, I would love to hear it. And I think that goes a little bit out of the way from, hey, I'd love to meet for coffee and pick your brain and all of that stuff, because they already knew that I was taking myself seriously because I wanted to pursue education in this field.
Mm.
So now, because it was pinpointed, They go, here's my college experiences. Here's what I wouldn't have done. Here are the things I wish I've done. And all of them very lovingly said, keep in mind that this is what I would or would not have done. You are
Mm-hmm.
going to be different, but what I can offer you now is advice before you're taking those steps. I had emailed pretty much anybody that I could get in touch with, and they were all very kind. They said, I would love to chat, but I have 8 shows. Then I have a workshop during the day. I might have rehearsals on other days. So they were never inaccessible. It's just they didn't have the time. And then COVID happened, and immediately within that first week, all of these people are emailing me back going, hey, remember when I said I didn't have time? I've got time. If you want to chat, let's chat. And so my first, I was gonna say my first couple months, but that next year, I would dress in a nice button-up shirt and I would find like a good background and I would be on Zoom meetings all day, just meeting these people and talking about how they're navigating the scene. Because eventually, after that further education talk, we would go into how they're navigating things, especially with COVID and what the difference of COVID means for the industry and all of that stuff. And very lovingly, people like Ian Weinberger, Quentin Robinson, Zane Mark, they were Sean McDaniel. They were all people that were like, I understand where you're coming from, and let's have a mutual conversation because now I feel like I can come into the room without you expecting me to give you something. I can just come into the room and we can talk as two people
Mm-hmm.
because I know that your eyes are already set on somewhere else. And right now, all you need is guiders to help you figure out how to take those next steps. And so, again, going back to Doubtfire, one of the people that I met during COVID was Zane through the Muse organization. Zane was my first mentor, and we had kept in touch throughout not just that year, but after that as well. I had heard that Doubtfire was going out on tour, and I had just got in touch with Zane because at that point, I was in the beginning of my junior year of college. So again, same aspect. I was like, okay, in 2 years I graduate. If there is a way that I can take the X amount of hours in the practice room and X amount of hours doing local gigs and also be working on the things that music supervisors, music directors, drummers who are looking for subs, if I can work on that while I'm also doing these things, then hopefully by the time I graduate, I at least have a small skill set to offer that is resembling what they're looking for. And so I had got in touch with Zane about seeing if there was a way that I could talk to the music supervisor. And Ethan Pop, who is an incredible musician and a writer, but also a very loving human being, emailed me within the hour of me emailing him. Like very professional email and I say professional email but not the copy and paste template of hi Ethan my name and and do all of that stuff. Like it was my first impression, so I took time to make sure that I presented myself well but also didn't give him any of this copy and paste stuff because I'm sure he gets hit up like this all the time. He responded within the hour of me sending that email. And he was like, hey, I'm available this Thursday for a Zoom meeting if you want to meet up. I was
Mm.
like, great, cool. I got a meeting with a music supervisor. And this guy is going to, tell me things that I could look at what I'm doing now and tell me things that I can work on for the next 2 years while I'm in college. And then hopefully that goes somewhere. I say it now and I laugh, but also I took it seriously then as well. I showed up to this Zoom meeting, Clayton, in a suit and tie. Like, the guy was not going to see that I was wearing dress pants and dress shoes. Did I wear it? Of
That's
course,
funny.
because at that point, I was like, no, this is something that means taking a next step in my career, and not in the sense of you giving me an audition or you giving me a gig. But if I treat myself like a professional, I'm already coming in with a mentality of like, I have the best that I have to offer. And if you are offering any less than your best, you're not going to get anywhere. But if somebody can meet me where I am at the top of my lid and then go, hey, I'm going to pull you here. I'm going to have you learn this. The 100% then becomes like 50% because now you have all of this room to grow rather than you starting at 50%. And it's like, yeah, you're only going to grow to like what you could have offered in the first place. And so, yeah, I met with Ethan, and that was supposed to be a half-hour meeting. I had class at 8 a.m. and I met him at 7
Mm,
on Zoom. It was supposed to be a half-hour meeting, and it turned into a 2-hour conversation of
mm,
us doing this and just talking about like, hey, what was your experience coming from where you are as a music supervisor and arranger and orchestrator and accomplished instrumentalist? And that just became Pili and Ethan knowing each other.
mm.
And at the end of that conversation, he was like, I already looked you up before having this conversation. I already know some of the stuff that you are able to offer. I think there is a way to help you grow, but if this is something of interest to you, if Doubtfire specifically is something of interest to you, let's talk about an audition. And then he ended the call. He's like, sorry, I got another meeting. And so I'm sitting there in a suit and tie, late for class, going, did I just get did I just get a Broadway audition? What just happened? And it's because I walked into the room offering 100% of what I had to offer, but not in the egotistical way. In the way of like, here's everything I have to offer, and I want to grow, but I don't know how to do that. Help me. And he looked at it and he was like, cool, let's stay in touch. And he sent me a few excerpts because he wanted to hear what I sounded like on the Doubtfire thing. And then he got me in touch with Rodney. And Rodney, again, like Rodney Howard, drummer for, and he's going to roll his eyes if he ever hears this, but he's Rodney Howard. And this guy immediately, once I got his number from Ethan and I just shot him a text and I was like, hey, here's what's going on. The guy called me 20 minutes later. And so all of a sudden now I'm on the phone with Rodney as he's talking through this Doubtfire material and being able to offer your best while also wanting to get better is the formula for a good collaboration. So yeah, it was not an expected process, but it winded up turning out into a relationship that I am incredibly thankful for. I told Ethan at the end of Doubtfire because we closed in November, I told him if you ever need another guy to come and play your stuff, even if it's a workshop, I'm there because again, that first conversation of Pili getting to know Ethan and Ethan getting to know Pili, now I'm just invested in this artist's career. I'm like, wherever you go, you let me know and I will make it happen because now I am invested in you as a person. And so it's again incredibly thankful to have that connection.
Did you have to go to New York to play Mrs. Doubtfire on Broadway?
No, Doubtfire was one of those weird shows that COVID just like we talk about COVID murdering some shows and Doubtfire took the beat down. I mean, they were three previews in and just closed immediately, like the rest of Broadway. And then they
Hmm.
opened again 18 months later. Then Omicron hit. Then they opened again. And then after a little while of that, they had already had the theater for years at that point, but the show hadn't been playing. So I mean, by the time I even heard about it, I want to say it had closed already. I
You
mean,
got
there were so little performances that I think even the people that were subbing for Rodney didn't get to play because by the time Rodney would have got to that time where he's like, I can sub out shows, the show had closed already because
I
COVID was
gotcha.
just turning things around.
So they took the tour out with you, and you never came to New York. They Ethan trusted that you would be the right person for the. Okay, that's
When
cool.
I tell you that not only was it an investment, but it was a risk, like he did not hear me play that music in the room until being in the room. Like there was no, oh, we're gonna have you try this out on Broadway and then it goes bad. And he's like, cool, never talking to you again. Like it was,
Right,
no, the tour is opening in a month. If this doesn't work out, I'm screwed. I don't have a
right.
guy. And so he took a huge risk. And that goes into the whole preparation talk. Like the instant I want to say I found out about booking Doubtfire in March. Yeah, March of 2023. And immediately, like I have a picture of it somewhere, but I have one of those CSI whiteboards of like, this is Ethan Pop, this is Matt Smadle, the associate music supervisor, this is Wayne and Carrie Kirkpatrick, the writers, this is Rob McClure, this is Gabriel Vick, who played it on the UK, and literally like anything that I could know about the show, I wanted to know as well as possible. And then I went into that whole dissection of the music as well. Like if he wrote Studio 54 disco beat, I wanted to know Studio 54 like the other side of my hand. Like I wanted to know it so well that by the time I got into knew about it in March, by the time I got into around June, I was playing 8 shows a week in a
Mm,
practice room with the music director, with the MD cam up, and I
hmm
had my music exactly where it was going to be, and I had the cymbals set up and the drums set up exactly how it was going to be on tour. And I was playing 8 shows a week, June, July, and the first week of August before I left rehearsal,
mm.
because I was also looking at it of like, I've never had a gig where I had to play 8 shows a week. And so the stamina of playing drums is something that I don't know if I have yet. Great.
Mm.
I have 3 months. I can either throw this up in the air and hope that it lands where I want it to land, or I can physically place exactly where I want to be as long as I put in the work. And that was before rehearsals even started.
What do you think the biggest adjustment you had when you started touring? Was there anything that caught you off guard about life on the road?
Professionally, very luckily, I was already getting quite a few gigs in Phoenix. So gig wise, it was just a matter of kind of changing that aspect of like it's a different gig, it's different music, and all of that stuff. As far as living on the road, we have 2 suitcases. So it's like I'm going to pack whatever I can pack in there. I was also pretty adamant about once I got the tour, I was talking to other people about how they kept themselves sane, but also creatively in touch with themselves. And so I would go, I brought a camera with me on tour, and so I would photograph the cities that we were in. And then also go to the local jam sessions, go sit in at the local jazz bars. I was playing at the local churches because a lot of these cities that we were in were like the business centers of whatever city. And so there would be the theater and there was a church and there was, so I would reach out to those music directors and be like, "Hey, I wanted to reach out. I'm in town, would love to come play with you." And so there were a lot of times that I would play Sunday morning service and then I would walk over to the theater and play the 2 shows on Sunday.
Mm,
But that was a matter of me not only and funny enough, I wasn't thinking about it from a place of networking, but that was just a matter of me being like, I enjoy playing music. I'm in a position where I can come in to a city and do nothing else, and I have a paid gig. So why not go sit in at the local jam sessions? Why not go sit in at the local churches? Because that's just another chance to like be able to play.
mm.
And so a lot of it was figuring out how to creatively active. And then luckily, in it at the time it wasn't so luckily, but luckily I was also still getting my degree. I mean, I graduated in April of last year.
Mm.
So me and one other person, the person that played Lydia, Giselle Gutierrez, we had 8 shows a week, but also a paper due on Friday or a midterm that we had to take the next week. And so there were a lot of times that I would wake up and get my physical activity in, go to the gym, shower, park it at a local coffee shop, and just work on homework and classwork through the entire day, and then pack up my stuff and go to the theater.
What do you think being on that Mrs. Doubtfire tour, what was the most
Yeah.
unexpected or memorable thing that happened on that tour?
First of all, to be able to work with people like Ethan Pop and their Kirkpatrick brothers. I mean, I grew up watching what is the movie he did? The Rescuers. And so to hear the same writing, style of writing from these writers, and now I get to play the music, I was like, this is incredible. And then also to have Rob McClure and Aaron Kaburik and David Hibbard and Jody Kimura, who were all part of the original Broadway cast. Like that's not really something that you always get on a national tour. And to have somebody who was so familiar with the material that they could take liberties here and there while still remaining consistent was just such a creative energizer because we knew that it was going to stay consistent. If a prop malfunctions on stage or if a set doesn't get there in time, the person who is driving the bus is so familiar with what the road looks like that we can just trust him and do our jobs and know that we're going to get to where we have to be. So as far as like that side, that was the most enjoyable, fulfilling thing. And then in the meantime, one of the other things that I would go do while we were out on the road, and one of the most surprising things is how welcomed I was into educational institutions. Because what happens when a Broadway tour goes and visits is a lot of these students would talk to Rob is a two-time Tony nominee. And so they ask him these questions, but there is a level of separation because you know, he's had quite a career.
Mm.
And they're like, as a 21-year-old, I don't fully understand how to connect the dots to where I want to be. But when they look at a 22-year-old who is still in college, some of these people I would have graduated with, or they're like a year younger than me. Now they're asking these specific questions of like, as a 22-year-old, what were you doing 4 months ago before you had this job to be able to prepare for this? Or what was your audition process like? And how are you connecting with these people and all of this other stuff? And so the fact that I was welcomed into these educational institutions, and sometimes there were percussion studios, sometimes they were entire music programs, and to just be able to connect with them was another surprising but fulfilling thing.
Speaking of a situation like that, being in front of other people,
Yeah.
what kind of advice would you give to someone that would be interested in doing a tour like you did or being on the road with a Broadway show? What would you recommend that they do?
First of all, be a good person. If you are not somebody that people want in the room, if you don't walk into the room and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, it's Clayton. Great. It's going to be a good time." And there is a level of struggle that comes with any art. If a music director or even if a leading cast member can look at the drummer and be like, "You know what? Once we get to this dance number, I know we still have some things to figure out, but I know that guy's solid, so we're going to be okay." That only happens when they trust the person, not just as an artist, but as a human being as well. The first thing is to be a kind and decent human being. The second thing that I would say that I know is repeated quite often on this, but often repetition means that it's important. The other thing is just to say yes to every opportunity. The week before I was doing Mrs. Doubtfire, the first national Broadway tour, I was playing a youth production of Cinderella. There were things that I was learning on that gig too. I came into that gig treating it as if I was doing the first national tour because whatever I was learning at that point would be real-time knowledge that I could bring into a rehearsal room. And so it's when somebody pursues. Actually, you know what? I think Q might have said it on his episode of the podcast. See, I told you, I listen to these things. I pay attention. Who has this story where he talks about playing for the gig you want and not the gig you're on. And what he means by that is specifically with this youth theater thing. I've seen so many of these younger players come in and they haven't looked at the music or they don't have the proper gear or, and it's all fault of their own. Like I'm not talking about they don't have the proper gear because they can't afford it. I'm talking like they brought splash cymbals instead of crash cymbals or they brought things that they can control because they're like, it's a youth theater gig or it's a church gig or it's at a jazz dinner spot and I'm playing with a bass player and a keys player and nobody's going to be there. And
Mm.
the sooner that somebody, the sooner that an artist takes themselves professionally, I mean, the sky is the limit because the person who is driving the bus goes, no, we're all in on this. So wherever we're going, it's going to be the best that we can offer. And a perfect example of that is at Grand Canyon University. That pit situation was completely remote. The theater had the show going on, and across the street was the orchestra. And then in a separate room was the drums. First of all, the technological advances for a college to have that was ridiculous. So that's not something that I can take for granted because now I look at it and I'm like, not a lot of professional local theaters can do this. So the fact that you guys are offering this opportunity, something's going on here that I have to learn from. So I would hang out with the sound people and figure out how they're miking the drums and figure out how are we getting our feed from the theater and how are they getting our signal from what we're putting into the system. But the reason why I bring that up is because I was playing remote before Doubtfire. Like I learned how to make a room feel good while being remoted. And
Mm.
so when I came into Doubtfire, all of a sudden, because I had pursued these other opportunities before that in the highest way that I could, I was coming into Doubtfire going, this is a little different, but it still feels comfortable because I'm already familiar. And should I have showed up not prepared or not bringing the correct tools into the job, I wouldn't have had that opportunity to learn from that.
Speaking of opportunities, you have moved to Los Angeles
Hmm.
and you are pursuing opportunities there.
Yeah.
What kind of are you working on anything right now? And do you have any dream gigs? Like if you could play with anyone, any situation, what would be like your dream gig? And do you think you'd find that in LA?
Sure. So the funny thing is, I want to be like, my dream gig is to play Tower of Power. But no, it's not. I want to hear Garibaldi play Tower of Power. I made the move out to Los Angeles because I am very thankful for the opportunities that Doubtfire had presented itself to not only use as a career launching point, but I look at where I've come from and seen this as really only the basement level of what my career is going to be. While I was in Hawaii, I got the lucky chance to play with a few artists, Tommy Walker, Brian Duncan, Jody McBrayer, and be able to experience what it means to play behind an artist. That interaction of energy between audience and musicians is always something that I've really fell in love with. And the discipline of Broadway is a bit different because a lot of these times, specifically drummers, are remoted. And so when the tour came to an end, I decided to move out west. Also because it was way closer to home and I could go to the beach when I wanted to. But as far as professional things coming up, I am working on a few things that I'm excited to share hopefully soon. And then also, I'm 23. So I am looking at LA as a place to really, the way that it was explained to me is you don't walk into a gym for the first time and go and try to bench 225 pounds. That's not the way it works. And so, luckily, LA has provided some really great opportunities for me to be able to build the quote unquote muscles of where I want to be. And again, it's just a matter of stepping out in faith, and especially as artists, take a lot of risks. And so, believing in why you were called to be there in the first place is important. And yeah, as that tour kind of came to a close, I just felt more of a pull towards LA. And it's worked out so far. So I'm just riding that train.
Well, I know another friend of mine recently moved out there from New York. I have several people out there that I know are doing their thing. I could connect you with
Please.
Mr. Gordon Campbell himself, and I can't think of it. There's a whole bunch of people I know out there.
Yeah.
I don't know the scene like I do in New York, but putting the word out there of what you intend to do and where you are and what
Yeah.
you're looking for, as long as people know that, then the world and the universe will help you along your
Yeah.
journey.
Well, and also I think the important thing too that specifically younger players often overlook is the sense of community in the music industry. It's incredibly important to build a group of peers that are around you that will push you. And very luckily, some of those people are Lucy Ritter, who's on tour with Chaperone, Dominic Anzalone, who just did Hamilton a couple years ago. Really incredible players that make me want to be in the practice room because I see them play something or I hear them do something and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I want to go do that. And then the other side of it too are mentorships and not necessarily as like I am the mentee and you are the mentor, but just people who have built a career for themselves that are willing to help guide me as a young artist. And those people include Quentin Robinson, include Nate Morton, Brian Fraser Moore, all people who I have looked up to as players for years. And now to be able to like call them if a gig comes up and I'm like, hey, I need help navigating this and this for them to genuinely be willing to help is, that comes with time and that comes with trust as well. Because there are a lot of, I was just out to lunch with a friend a couple days ago, and while we were sitting at the table, a student DM'd him and went, hey, I graduated from this and this school. If you ever need a sub, let me know. It was just like, I need a gig, and you are somebody that does gigs, so give me a gig. And it's like,
Mm.
if you take the personality out of the music industry, there's nothing. There are zero things left. So the sooner that artists realize, whether it's endorsements or it's gigs for music directors or subbing for other drummers, the instant that you treat the industry as a living, breathing thing rather than some kind of thing that owes you something,
Mm.
the more beneficial it becomes within seconds. And it's just a mentality thing.
So, where can people find you on the internet?
Sure. Pili Fronda on Instagram and Facebook and all the other socials, and then www.pilifronda.com. That website I take a lot of pride and joy in as well.
And spelling that is Pilinama
ABCDEFGH.
Pilifronda
Yes,
dot
sir.
com. I'm glad we finally connected face to face, even though we're not in
Same
person.
here.
We almost got there in New York a couple weeks
Almost.
ago.
Almost.
We were like,
Almost.
hey, where are you? Oh, I'm this
Mm-hmm.
way. But
Mm-hmm.
we connected and we will still continue to connect. And, when I'm out there in the West Coast, I'll hop on a plane, get out to
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles, and then we'll both see each other in Hawaii. And
Yep.
you show me where the spots to go are.
Exactly. And no matter where we are, we will be getting good food.
Amen. Thank you, Pili. I'm
The pleasure is mine. Like I said earlier, long time listener, first time caller. This is a huge honor.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
Well, and I also have to say this before we log off. Clayton, the things that you're doing for the educational side of Broadway is huge. Like, I think somebody has to illustrate for you the fact that you saw a need and not just filled it, but went so far above and beyond
Mm.
that as I was prepping for this tour, while I was walking to go get lunch, I was listening to Broadway Drumming 101. It's not this cute mom in her garage doing a podcast about fitness or whatever. This is a tool that is so often used, but also I think not well enough known. And now I'm biased because I know you personally and also know the show well. It's an opportunity to not necessarily get a leg up, but to know what a lot of these players who are wanting to do this are getting into. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it a ton because you have no idea specifically for me how much it's helped.
I'm glad I could be a part of this and help you. And I look to help as many people as I possibly can. It's the reason why I started this. And
Yeah.
so, what can I do to give people knowledge of what I've done and to share information? Because To me, that's what it's about. It's like giving back and sharing. And it's like, why do I need to keep all this information? I could just share it, and hopefully, people will be able to do what I've done because it's
Sure,
wonderful. It's a
sure.
wonderful thing.
Absolutely. And it's helping and it shows.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, my friend, take care.
All right, we'll talk soon.
All right.
All right.